Today, we're going to replace the dirty grip on this paddle. All we really need is this dirty gripped paddle, a pair of scissors, and some new replacement overwraps. As far as replacement grips go, many companies make these. I prefer the head ones. I've tried other brands. Everybody has their own favorites. This particular type comes in different colors, pink and black, and this bright yellow. I prefer the bright yellow for two reasons. One, it really shows when it gets dirty, so I know that I need to replace my grip. These are $6 a pack, so about $2 a piece. So if I can see the dirt on there, then I can tell how much longer I have before I need to replace it. So that's a good thing. Second thing is, to me, I can feel the difference between the yellow ones and the pink and the black on how tacky they are or how good they feel in my hand. And to me, by far, the yellow one has the best feel in my hand. I feel like the pink and the black are a little bit slicker and the texture is a little bit different. That's my personal opinion. Your opinion may vary. These overwraps come in many flavors and textures. I get the ones that say extreme soft, and then down at the bottom it says sweat absorption and tackiness. Hope that's in focus on the camera. They come in different types of grip depending on what you're looking for. So I like these a lot. Now what I will say is that recently Head has started producing these that say Pickleball on them. I'm not a big fan. Again, the texture is different than the ones that don't say Pickleball. So I like the texture on these, and they're probably just tennis overwraps, tennis grips. So I prefer the ones that do not say Pickleball. I know people want everything labeled Pickleball these days. For me, I just care mainly about how this feels in my hand, how it feels on the grip of my paddle. So I get the ones that are not labeled Pickleball. Let's look at the dirt on my grip, and this is why I like the yellow ones. One of the reasons is I can actually see where my hand has been on this paddle and see how much dirt is accumulated versus what it looked like new. So down here, I don't have my hand down here at all, but you can actually see my thumb mark here. When I hold my paddle, I always hold it in the same orientation, meaning forehands always this side of the paddle, backhand's always this side of the paddle. I never rotate my paddle around, and it's a quirk that I have, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But you can see how much dirt is on this, and this is after 20 to 25 hours of use. And what starts to happen is it gets really dirty down by the end and gets really slick, and so I can't grip it as well, and I find I have to grip it tighter. Never a good thing if we're over gripping our handle. So one of the things I like about this yellow color is it shows dirt really well, which you'd think I don't really like that, but this is more of a functional thing for me and not a visual aesthetic thing. I want to see how much dirt's on it, and in general, I replace my overwrap, my grip, every week. So generally on Sunday, if I play more that week and I play 20 to 25 hours a day or coach or drill, then that's the buildup after that amount of time. So I can see that on here. It starts to feel less tacky. It feels a little bit more, not difficult to grip, but the adhesion between my hand and the grip isn't as good as when it's brand new. Again, only $2 a piece. Takes 5 minutes to replace it. So let's go replace it. First thing we want to do is prepare the paddle. So if yours has this little rubbery gasket around the edge, around the end here, and this is purely for cosmetics to cover up any names on the tapes or anything like that, just pull that off. And again, it really doesn't do anything for your play or for your style or anything. It's just a little rubber silicone ring that goes around the end. Some people have their name printed on theirs so they can identify their paddle. You can buy them in different colors. I leave it on there. I don't know. I could not. It just doesn't look as good with the tape sitting there. All right, so that's off. All right, we have the silicone ring off. Now we're going to take the dirty grip off. Pretty simple to do. Find the end of the tape that goes around the top edge here. We're just going to pull that off. And many times the end of the wrap will still be attached. If it's not, you may just have to pull that off as well. Or we're just going to unwrap this, pull the old one off, and get ready for the new one. All right, the dirty grip is off. I'm going to remember where the end came off, and I'll talk about that in a second. So you can see there's another overwrap underneath the one that I had. And then underneath this one is the original black leather grip that came with this paddle. I talked in a different video about how paddle companies only make these handles in probably 2 sizes. The chance that your paddle fits your hand well, not very good, because hands come in more sizes than 2. And I have 2 of these on here just to make it thicker. Now actually you could think of it as 4 because this one's double wrapped, so it's overlaid. You can space it out so there's one thickness as we wrap this, and we'll talk about that in a second. Or you can, when you come around the second time, overlap it by half. And so this one actually has 2 thicknesses off of that one wrap. And then I took the dirty one off, so a total of 4 in reality that I have on here to make it a little bit thicker. My hand's not huge for a guy. I'm 6 feet, just under 6 feet tall. And this is the larger handle, and still it's a little bit small for my hand. So adding these wraps on really helps. So I just peel off the dirty one, and we're going to put a new one on top of that. Paddle's prepared and ready to go. Have a new grip out of the package. So I'm going to peel this tape off, and we're going to use that at the very end. That's the first thing we took off when we unwrapped the dirty handle, or the dirty wrap. So there's a little tab here on one of these sides. I'm just going to take this and gently pull it off. And there's some backing on here that we're going to leave on for now, that it prevents it from sticking to everything. Now there's a little backing at the very tip here. I'm going to pull that off, get it out of the way. I don't need that anymore. And then I'm just going to stick this on something close that I can grab it later as I need it. So it's within reach, it's right there. The backing is still on here, so it's not going to stick to whatever I stick it to. It's just going to hang there for me for a second. All right, here's the overwrap. So we're just going to open this up. So down at the very end here, there's a little place you can grab. There's a plastic coating on top of the part that's going to be against your hand to protect the tackiness and the grittiness, just to keep it clean. So we're going to grab the very tip of this little plastic, probably difficult or impossible to see on the camera, and pull this plastic lining off of this overwrap. Throw that plastic lining aside. Okay, before we get started, we need to understand that there's a cut on the end of this. So this was where we opened it up originally. So the 2 ends of this grip wrap are not the same. One is just plain and squared off. They just cut it off like this. And this one is tapered, right? So if we can see it like this. So this taper matters. And as you put this on, you can see how this top part is tapered. If I can get that oriented a little bit better. And then it comes up to the full width of the grip. And this top part right here is what's going to go around the very end of the paddle. So it's going to wrap around the paddle like this. And then since it's on this angle, this is going to help us angle this down the paddle. So if you could envision, this is the top part of the paddle right here. And then as this comes off down at the angle, and that helps us get the angle going down the paddle, down the grip as we need. So understanding then that this taper is here, but it's not on the other end. When we get to the end and we wrap this around the paddle, we're going to have to cut that taper onto this end, which is going to then have a solid straight line around the other end of the paddle. So this first end that you're going to start putting it on the paddle is tapered. The other end is not, because they don't know how much of this you want to use, and some of the paddle handle lengths are different. So it's just a blank, and we're going to cut the same angle on this as is on this end. It's going to be in the other side of it, but we're essentially going to do on the blank end, the square end, what they've done here when we wrap this. We are ready to wrap. There is one little adhesive part on the very end of this, and it's covered with one of these white plastic things. I'm going to pull that off, and that just helps it adhere to the end of this paddle as we start wrapping. So I'm going to put this end on the, now I have this weird thing where I like this little bump that's here, so if I put the beginning end of each one of these wraps on the same location, it creates a little bump at the end, helps me hold the paddle a little bit better so it doesn't come loose. So we're just going to hold that here with our thumb, and we're going to start wrapping around the end of this paddle. And again, there was a little bit of adhesive on the very end of that, And as we're pulling and getting started here, try and have some tension on this. And it doesn't have to be exact, but if I put this loose, you can have a little buckle here underneath, and that will create a wrinkle. I don't want that. So as you're starting this initial go around of this paddle handle, try and keep this a little bit tight as you're pulling, and stretch it a little bit. Try not to overstretch it. And if you have to go back and go, oh, I've got a little wrinkle, just undo that, come back and do it again, and spend more time here trying to get this right. And I will kind of feather this up and down so I can try and not have any wrinkles at the very beginning. So now we're running out of that tapered edge. Right here is where that taper ended, and we're still coming straight around the bottom of this paddle handle, trying to keep this a little bit tight. And then now, as we get here, and I'm going to redo this until I'm happy with it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So now I've come all the way around, and now the taper is gone, and what I have is a straight edge on both sides, but it has started my angle down this paddle. Now you may have to do this a few times to where this starts to feel more and more normal. So I'm just going to start coming around this paddle. And what happens is, you can do this two ways. One, if you just want one thickness, you could have this so that this ends up where the top of this ends where the bottom of this one was. Mine, I overlap right in the middle of the two. And so if we can see this as we come around, I'm trying to use the previous time I went around as a guide, so I can see the crease there of the previous wrap the last time I went around this side of the paddle. I'm just trying to match that as I go around. So there's some holes on here, and you can have them be relationally the same with each other. They don't have to be straight up and down. Nobody's going to notice, and you can't get them that way anyway. So as I'm going around, I'm trying to use what I'm seeing as this crease the last time I went around to tell me where to put the top layer as I'm coming around this paddle. And we're just going to keep doing this to the end. And if you get down here and you think, oh, that doesn't look very good, just unwrap it and do it again. Or you go, that's good enough. Nobody's ever going to see this. I've never noticed anybody's grip on their paddle. I think once or twice where somebody had just started doing this and I grabbed their paddle and I went, oh, who wrapped this paddle? That's terrible. And then they said, I did. And I go, oh, sorry. And they go, yeah, I know, it wasn't very good. So we're going all the way down to the end here. So I'm just following the previous layer that was on there, and for me, I'm doing this in half. So I'm taking half of what the underneath layer was and putting half of this top layer on top of that. So that gives me 2 wraps. So you can see I'm kind of getting down to the end of the paddle, and so where do I stop wrapping here? So that's a personal thing. You figure out how far up the paddle you want to go. So now we've got here, now we have this end that's not tapered anymore. We have to cut the taper in here. And so what I want to do is cut this taper so that it comes this way. So I'm taking a triangle out off of this paddle that's closer to the paddle face, off of this wrap that's closer to the paddle face. So you can see it's not tapered, and it's going to continue on down to that angle. So I want to take an angle, I want to take a taper like was at the beginning. So I'm just going to eyeball this and cut it. Doesn't have to be exact. So I will cut it to some length, leave me some spare room here, and then I'm going to cut this taper in. And I'm trying to cut this straight to all right, so now we have this taper, which doesn't look as good. Oh, now we have this taper, which doesn't look as good as the original up at the top, but that's fine. And I try to cut this in a straight line up to here, wherever here is for you. So wherever I want this to end, then I'm trying to cut this taper, and then all I'm going to do is finish this wrap all the way around. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to hide this with that black tape that we took off a minute ago and with that silicone ring. So with that taper and that straight line, you can see it kind of came around even. So there's roughly a straight line down here. This tape that we had, so I pulled this off. Going to put the end on here. So there's part of this is sticky. right? And the other part has this white plastic covering it. So I'm going to leave the white plastic on there for now, and I'm going to put the sticky part on the end of my wrap. So now that's on there and secure. Now I'm going to pull the white protective covering off, and I'm just going to wrap this around the end. And that's it. If you had a silicone ring, put that back on to cover up the letters or the end of the tape or whatever, just to make it look nice. Some people say it does vibration dampening. I disagree. I don't think it does anything. It's just cosmetic to cover up this tape. As far as I know, I've never seen anything where anybody said it did any dampening, and this is not heavy duty enough to dampen anything, and it's not in a good enough place on the paddle to dampen anything. So now I have a nice new grip. Feels great. I love the feeling of a great new grip as I put it on there, and you can tell it's clean. And then over the course of the next week, it'll get dirtier and dirtier, and then I'll do this again in another week. As I stated in the beginning, these are roughly $6 for a pack of 3, and if you have some hesitancy of, oh, I can't do that, I guarantee you that you can. After you do this 3 or 4 or 5 times, you'll be a pro at it, and you can get through it, and you know what you're doing. So the first 1 or 2 may be a little bit rough. They may not be visually all aligned and nice and symmetrical, but that's okay. Nobody's going to know. If you do one and you don't like it, pull it off and do another one, or reuse the same one that you did. It's going to take a little bit longer the first time or 2, but I think there's really good value in having this replaced every week. It feels really good in my hand. It's not nearly as slick from the dirt and the sweat that the old one was, and so it feels like I have a new paddle. At least the handle's new. Take care.